I recently rewatched the first two August Underground films, 2001's August Underground and the 2003 sequel August Underground's Mordum, both of which were directed by a guy named Fred Vogel. And as my good buddy John did such an excellent review of the first film in an earlier video, I kind of figured it'd be worth all of our time and efforts for me to kind of analyze the second film in the series, a film which in many ways is a lot more infamous and even in some regards might be considered a better overall motion picture. For those of you unfamiliar with the August Underground series, it's a series of films, it's a trilogy actually, directed by this guy named Fred Vogel. And Fred Vogel is this guy that's probably a psychopath, but we're not really going to use that against him because his films are actually really entertaining. As my friend John kind of pointed out, the absolute best way to describe the August Underground films would be as if Harmony Korine, the guy that directed Gummo and wrote Kids, was in charge of directing a Gorno movie like Saw or Hostel. It's just so incredibly vivid and over the top, and even though it is very explicit and graphic in some regard, there's also a little bit of a social satire element to it. And I think his films are very, very entertaining, and considering the budget and limitations, I think they're also actually pretty decent. In fact, I'd probably watch these more than I would most of the mainstream direct we see coming out on pretty much a weekend by weekend basis. We've already talked about August Underground, the original film 2001, to a pretty great deal, so I'm going to turn my attention towards the sequel, a film which is considered by many people to be one of the most extreme, graphic, and disturbing motion pictures of all time. Admittedly, there are some pretty brutal scenes. The special effects in the film are absolutely outstanding. And I have to say, there are the occasional moments that kind of make me feel a little iffy. But overall, I don't think it's a film that's anywhere near as sickening or depraved as most people will point out it to be. In fact, I actually think it's a really good film, and in some ways it's a more focused effort than the first film. If you're comparing the two films, I say that you're kind of using the Alien versus Aliens analogy here. August Underground, I think, is a more atmospheric film. It's a more diverse film. And I think overall, as a thematic effort, it's probably a better film structurally. However, I think Mordum is sort of like Aliens in the fact that it's just straight up action. It gives you what you want, no filler, just instant gratification. So really, I can't say that one of the films is better than the other because they both have their own merits. And they're really very distinct. They're not exactly the same material in both. So if you want a little bit of suspense and a little bit of character, go with the first film. And if you just want to get straight into it and have, an hour and a half of insanity, definitely go with Mordum. What is Mordum about, you may be asking? Well, it's in many ways it's basically your standard Pseudo-Snuff film, but it also has some elements of the degenerate youth film. If you ever saw a movie called The Doom Generation, it's very comparable to that one. It's about a bunch of teens. Well, not really teens. They're these kids that are really heavy in the punk rock new metal scene. And there are two guys that are overweight and really freaky looking, and they look very dirty and grungy, and they probably listen to the Insane Clown Posse. And there's one female in the group, and she kind of fluctuates. Sometimes she looks decent, but most of the time she kind of looks really, really rough around the edges. And I don't know, some guys are into that, so who am I to judge anyone based on their physical appearances, especially when they're puking on people. But so anyway, they just go around, and the film is just them. It's done in a found footage style, and they just run around filming all of their madcap antics. The film begins with two of the characters going into what appears to be like a drug den and just massacring everyone inside. It's very realistic, but at the same time, it's just so over the top. I mean, it's taken to such an absurd extremity that it's really kind of hard to take it serious anymore. And if you don't know what happens in this scene, well, let's just say it involves a certain character being forced to cut off his own membership to the man club, if you get my drift. And like I said before, the special effects in this film are just absolutely, utterly amazing, considering the budget restrictions. And I'm not really sure where the special effects crew for this film went to school to do their makeup effects, but I'm pretty sure that after watching this film, they must have took a lot of notes on a prosthetic dong making day, because I was just amazed by that sequence. From there, the film kind of takes sort of a turn into like almost pseudo-psychological waters. You see the characters like mutilate themselves. There's this one guy who just like shaves off his beard and starts just shaking for no really apparent reason. There is a really lengthy, as in like a 20-minute sequence where the female character decides to like kidnap these two other females and just basically just barf on them for 20 minutes straight. It's a very, very bizarre and hard to describe scene. It goes on forever, and your mileage may vary on that one. And we get a couple more pseudo-snuff scenes, and the film concludes with a scene which, if you've been on the internet long enough, you've probably heard about it. And admittedly, it's pretty darn grisly. I have to admit, it kind of shook me a little. It's definitely something that's not going to be something you can just wash out of your mind anytime soon. But thankfully, it's not as graphic as you've heard. I mean, it's still really, really freaky, but overall, I don't think it's something you're going to see and just be absolutely just sickened to your core when you watch it, which, may disappoint some people, but there you go. As far as its merits as an actual film, you know what, I'm going to admit I like it. I think it's actually a legitimately, not a great movie, but I think it's very, very, very good considering what the director's intent was and just the budget restrictions. And I think it's a very, entertaining movie. It's a great way of sort of telling a feature story. It's definitely something different as far as narratives go. And I think aesthetically, it's a pretty interesting movie. If Werner Herzog woke up with brain damage and just wanted to make nothing but slasher movies, this would probably be what his movies would look like, in case you're trying to figure out what exactly I'm talking about as far as a visual structure goes. This has got to be one of the better modern transgressive horror films out there. I think if you're trying to find some movies to kind of get you in to the genre, this is a pretty good segueing tool, I believe. As far as my favorite scene in the film, it's a really bizarre one, but something that's really struck me because I really like the juxtaposition. It's a scene where they go into a drug den and they have the camera and they lay it down in front of like one of those frozen food dinners, like the ones with like fried chicken and mashed potatoes, and you just like see them just like smashing this guy, and the entire time you're having like a piece of chicken like obscuring like half the camera. I just thought that was a really awesome looking aesthetic design, but then again, I have weird taste in modern art. So overall, in case you're wondering, I think it's actually worth seeing. In fact, I actually really do recommend checking out both of the films. I would say that I probably enjoy Mordum more than the original, but like I said, they're both really great independent transgressive films. Like I said before, if you want a little bit of atmosphere, go with the first film, and if you just want straight up lunacy, go with Mordum. Either way, I really, really enjoy both of these movies, and they get my highest recommendation. They're absolutely required viewing for all degenerate cinema aficionados. And since Halloween's coming up, why not check them out? Support the fine arts, support Fred Vogel, and support August Underground. Thumbs way up.